my crafty friends, it's Sharon Luske here from My Crafty Greetings, and we are hopping along today with Same Set Syndrome. Teresa Russell did the most awesomely fabulous thing and designed us up some ephemera, and we're going to be using that to make some cards today. Now you'll also notice some of the other girls have paper that matches. Obviously, being in Canada in the northern tundra, it's a little bit harder to get things up here, so I'm going to be crafting with this gorgeous ephemera, and I don't think that the lack of paper is going to hurt one lick. So although I have a brother scan and cut, I wanted to show you here that some of these difficult cuts can still be done fairly easily when you're fussy cutting by hand. And one of the tips that I'm going to tell you today is when you're doing your fussy cutting, when there's little tiny skinny parts and they're intricate, always start on the tightest curve, usually the inside curves first, and make sure that you reduce the paper on the opposite side. Not quite to the edge of where you are going to cut, but just enough so that paper will bend without weakening. The other thing too that's a good idea is as you're cutting, cut away extra pieces that are getting in your way. And when you're going around the outside, if you think of it when you're going to do your cutting, make sure you leave a little handle to hold those curls so that once you get around the curve, you can just nip your handle off and voila, it's cut. So one of the other tips that I have for fussy cutting, we usually use a black marker. This is a Tombow, and we go around those edges to get rid of the white of the paper cuts. And sometimes, you know what, you leave a little rim around your paper too where it has the tiniest hair of a white border. And when you're cutting something that's a little more intricate, that happens more often than not. And you want to cut, or you want to go around those little intricate parts. But sometimes I find, depending on the color of your image, if that black line starts to get too thick, it doesn't look very nice. Now here's a green, and I just picked any green Copic marker, and I'm going around the outside of the Christmas tree here. And you can see how up at the corner there it matches, it's a little bit softer. And although the contrast is a lot less pronounced with the trees, you'll see later on with my little men that it completely helps not using black. Now this is fabric paint, and it is puffy fabric paint that you would be using if you were putting on a t-shirt. And I don't know if you're like most of my friends where you're rushing around trying to find that expanding paint to go on your cards. This is the same thing. Go grab yourself a little bit of this from the craft store, and you can use it in exactly the same way. You're going to use your heat tool and give it a zap, and I'm going to add some glitter over top of mine while it's still wet. We're going to set these aside so that the outside of the paint itself can dry up a little bit before we get it puffing. You only want to allow it to dry for a minute or two, and during that minute or two we're going to get this sentiment prepped. Now I'm using the tape technique to make this nice and shiny so that it stands out on my card today, and I'm just going to burnish this in after I get it cut off and make sure that it's got a nice seal with no bubbles or wrinkles in it. And I'm going to fussy cut this out too. So these are the trees, and I'm grabbing it with my tweezers here to make sure I don't burn my fingers. And this embossing tool is quite hot right now, and you can see it's puffing things up. Now I don't know if my tool is on the way out because it seemed like it took me having to hold the tool much closer this time to get the puffing action going on. But you test it with your own tool. Start out a little bit further away, and if it's not puffing as quickly as you like, go ahead and get in closer there, and you can see all that puffy deliciousness that makes it look like fallen snow caught on those branches. Ooh, and there's some puff action going on there. Woohoo! Anyways, it's a great substitute for a product that you might not be able to find. I know Marvy has a puff pen out, and sometimes you can get embossing powder that puffs up too. I think there's also some like different types of products that you squeeze out, but essentially it's just this. This is what you're looking for. Now the other thing too, I wanted to go around the outside of this, but I've already taped it. A Sharpie is going to be able to stick to that even though it's already got tape on it. So that's what you want to do. No Copics, use your Sharpie. Now I'm doing a background. I got out my blending brush here and my two different distress inks, Weatherwood and Stormy Sky. And I am going to just slop a background on because I'm going to be doing a little stamping, and then there's going to be a scene here. So it doesn't need to be perfect, and therefore I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. I'm even going to get some blemishes and marks here, and I'm not going to sweat it. I'm just going to say, oh well, what the hey. It actually looks like a little piece of felt fluff. So this cheap little stamp I have that I'm wrestling, trying. You ever had this where your stamps won't come off? This thing just did not want to let go. I had to fight it. Now I take a little piece of ATG, stuck it to my finger, stuck the stamp to my finger, and lickety splickety, look how fast I can get those snowflakes on there. That is much faster than using a block. It's the best way to stamp little tiny stamps repeatedly. I went ahead and cut myself some Nina snowbanks. Oh, and this is going to be an 8.5 by 4 inch wide card. I don't know, everything's going wrong in the craft room today. The stupid pin was stuck, and I was fighting that. And I got this all glued up. I thought I was pretty clever gluing up one side and then spinning it around to glue the other side. And I should have picked a more full glue bottle. And then I realized, yeah, I stuck this on straight and it was supposed to be crooked so that the snowbank would end up lining up the way I needed it to. So I just went ahead and pulled that up and stuck it back down. It happens, doesn't it, folks? It happens. You do something and it just goes kablooey, and as long as nobody's watching your video, they'll be none the wiser. This card's actually going to be for my brother. I know when he sees it, he is going to laugh his butt off, and he needs a good laugh this year. He's had kind of a crummy year. So I'm sticking on the last snowbank here, and I'm making sure that I leave it nice and loose. So I have two little gnomes here, and this is a little Sharon gnome. And this is what I was talking about. If I had touched this up in black, it would have been a big black line, and it would not have looked great. And that's why I'm saying, you know, touch up those little edges with colors that match, and you'll see a big difference in your ephemera or fussy cuts, whatever it is that you're doing. So anyways, that's a little Sean gnome that I've got there. And Sharon and Sean were out in the woods on Crown land, and that's what they call land in Canada that belongs to the Canadian government. And Sharon's legs are way too long because at this point in time, at 9 and 11 years old, Sharon was shorter than Sean. So, and they were partners in crime, these two little gnomes who loved their mom, and mom was not home. And so they journeyed off into the woods and found the biggest Christmas tree they could find, and boy, were they excited. So they cut that sucker down with a saw, and it fell down, and it must have been 30 feet tall. I'm not kidding, it was huge. And so I'm cutting some wedges out here so I can get the next part. So they were so excited, and they were running all over the place, tying a rope around this tree so that they could haul this tree back to surprise their mom that even though there was not a lot of money for Christmas, we would in fact have a Christmas tree this year. This actually happened. So we tied that sucker up and we knotted that rope down, and Crown land is private property of the Canadian government. You're not supposed to be going hunting or stealing Christmas trees or anything like that. And luckily, nobody caught us other than our mom, who was quite irritated with us, but still excited about the tree. So Sean Gnome went, and Sharon Gnome helped as much as she could, but she was little sister and she wasn't very useful. And he finally said, "Get in here and help me." Oh, here comes a mistake again. I glued down the tree. Anyways, Sean Gnome is still stuck in there. He is pulling on that rope as hard as he possibly can, and Sharon Gnome went for a ride on the tree, and then she got really tired and she laid on the tree. This actually happened, I'm telling ya. And then she finally said, "Okay, I'm gonna help you." So she got stuck into that rope and started pulling too. like she was a horse or a dog pulling a sled. And I'm going to tell you, the snow that built up as we pulled that tree along, we left this big huge gouge in the snow, and anybody who would have seen this tree stump sticking there and all the pieces that fell down, and then the big huge trail of snow with all the wake bits coming out the side, would have known exactly where this tree ended up. And nobody knocked on my mom's door and said, "Excuse me, ma'am, have your children stolen a Christmas tree?" So I'm puffing this up again. I didn't leave this to puff up, but this, if you let it dry less time, it'll puff up crazy. Okay, so now I figured out, oopsie, I wasn't supposed to glue the tree down, so I'm gonna wrestle this sucker off of here. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Oh, surprise, it worked. Now I'm gonna finish puffing this up. I realized as I was setting it that I needed to stick stuff in behind, and then I thought, well, if I keep setting this, that glue is gonna be completely dry. It's going nowhere. So anyways, Sean and Sharon definitely left footprints in the snow, and we want to make sure that there's some footprints here and that the snow is a little mussed up between their feet. And it was deep snow that we were slogging through to get back to our house. And I think my mom was at choir practice. And it was a pretty thick woods too, so I'm going to make sure that there's lots of trees in this woods. And I'm going to make sure that they're glued down nicely so that they don't fall out in the envelope on the way to cheer my brother up for Christmas. And yeah, I went ahead and got all these trees situated. Now just quickly too, while we're watching Sean and Sharon yanking this big monstrous tree that was bigger than the house through the forest, Teresa has been a fantastic foundation in our industry, and Teresa is actually the owner of Scrapping for Less, and she is retiring. And I have to say, our little YouTube community owes a lot to her and what she's done for us. The very first video that I ever watched was Crazy Paper Chick, and she was doing work for Scrapping for Less, that card kit of the month, and I just remember thinking, what a brilliant idea. And Teresa's a very creative, very forward-thinking lady, and you know, I hope she really enjoys her retirement. I hope that she ends up being able to spend time doing things that she really loves. Hopefully still ends up here on YouTube. You're going to see her along the hop. Give her an extra thank you. You know, it's people like her that have made our industry what it is, and she's just amazing. And especially so to go ahead and still spend the time to pull this together for us for our collaboration. Now you can see I cut the side of the tree off there just to make sure that it was not in the way of the fun foam. I'm going to glue down the bases of the tree here, and then I had just some dark reddish paper in my stash that I already stuck down to the card base. And you can see that did not collapse that puffy paint. And I'm gonna stick that down now and trim off the tops of the trees. So that's the other solution you can have too if you can't cut those little curls on those trees, is just to whack them off and put some marker on them. Now I wanted to stick down these little curls because they were so cute and they were my favorite part of the tree. And you know, this was such an amazing set that Teresa drew, and I had so many different ideas in my head, but I started thinking about my brother and that silly Christmas tree story. There's actually a photo that corresponds with it. I'll see if I can find it. It won't be for this video, but it's the two of us very unhappy in front of the tree after we were told that we had broken the law. So we were generally really good kids that wanted to do the right thing, but that was a big oopsie on our part. So anyways, oh, and we had to saw the tree in half. We lost like, I think it was like another 7 feet, because by the time we dragged this thing home and stood it up against the house, it was taller than the house and there was no way to get it through the door. So it was quite the fiasco. There was a big mess everywhere, but you know, a well-intended mess. It is a mess lovingly made by two kids who love their mom, and I'm thinking about Sean this Christmas and all the fun we had as two little kids and the silliness that we got up to. But Thank you so much for joining me today. Do hop along to my friends, give them some love. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I sure would love it if you would. And thumbs up, comment, and share. Share this idea with other people. I have lots of other ideas. Here's some more videos for you. And hopefully I'm always creating or teaching you something new in the craft room. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye.